welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and my next guest is a self-taught emerging artist creating meaningful, vibrant work. Her paintings are a stark contrast of vibrant color and white space that draws the viewer into her subjects. Please welcome Jessy DeSantis.
Hello.
I worked on that intro a lot before you got on.
It's great. I mean, it sounds so good.
I want to do the old boxing thing from back in the day, like Michael Buffer style.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You got it.
So give us the vital stats. Where'd you grow up and how long have you been making your work and what brought you to Baltimore?
Sure. I grew up in Miami. I was born in Virginia by chance because my family was living in Nicaragua, which is in Central America. And I was just born there mostly for citizenship, but went back to Nicaragua for a year before I moved to Miami. So I'm originally from Miami. I've been there like my whole life. And Baltimore, the connection was through my partner. And about 6 years ago, we made a decision to move to Baltimore because my partner had went to school here and we were ready for a change of scenery. So yeah, that's where I'm from.
So 305 represent.
Yeah. 305, you know.
So let's talk about your art a bit. Obviously, because it's an art podcast, art talk, I guess. What is that daily? So describe what your work is, because I like to let the guests kind of break down what their work is versus me giving my verbose or would-be verbose view. But so describe what your work is and kind of give us that what your art making routine looks like.
Sure. So my art is on, I would say, medium to large scale. I started painting when I moved to Baltimore. I didn't go to art school and it was a change of career for me. So I started painting a reflection of myself here through magical realism, which is like a literature term, but I use that with my painting. So it started off depicting places in Baltimore, sceneries in Baltimore, and then the magical elements are like Central American and Miami tropical fusion that I put together. Because it was a reflection of myself here, but also a shared community because there is a Central American, Mesoamerican, Mexican community here as well, which resonates with folks. And it makes my heart warm and happy and fuzzy when folks can point that out and be like, wow, this reminds me of home. And this really feels like me here as well. And it's like, okay, cool. So yeah, so that's what my artwork started off as. I started doing some portraiture since then, also worked on foods. And all of these different things, themes boiled down to my roots as being Central American and talking about identity and indigeneity, and then just not being like in your homeland anymore, you know? So you're like, from a perspective of the diaspora. So right now I'm working on, there's a lot of birds in my painting too. I should mention that. People are like, what's up with the birds? And basically they're spiritual for me. And they also embody something you can't see, right? So something that moves through the air, which feels spiritual to me, but you know, birds you can visualize. So that's what the birds are for me.
I will say, like, when I went out to the Spotlight exhibit at Murder House, and I was like, I got to finish this off. I got to get all three. It's like collecting Pokemon and all. And it was just like going there and kind of seeing your work. Now, granted, I love Jazz's work. I love Rose's work. When I was seeing your work, I was like, who's this person? I need to interview them. What the hell? And the work is great. The colors pop, and definitely it resonates in that way of like, all right, I even see, I think it was one that it has like steps in there, but then I see like the just it has this Central American, South American kind of like maybe statues within the stuff. It's like that's fire. And I'm going through making multiple passes, looking for these little smaller details that, because I took Spanish for 5 years. No, but looking for these smaller details that just through education and just through interest that you're like, oh, wow, that's in there like that. And, oh, that's Patterson Park, or that's this water fountain I've seen, or what have you. It has these different elements that are just really cool, and it just pop. And yeah.
Yeah, I was really into language, or I still am really into language. And learning a new language, actually. So what you saw on the steps were Maya glyphs, which spell out something, and it spells West Baltimore blessings.
I'm gonna have to go back.
Yeah, that painting is actually a painting of my stoops in my house.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's not actually on there, but that was like one of the elements of magical realism that I incorporated to that painting. Yeah.
So you said this was a career change. So what was your background before this? Education? What was your background before going into this?
It was accounting.
Oh no! A real inside the office job.
Yeah. Yep. And I said this in the artist talk at Motor House. Where I grew up, it was like a immigrant community in Miami, and the arts as first generation, like it's not a career choice. Like it wasn't an option, like for me. And so like I really fed into or consumed what this idea of success should be, or, what careers to choose. And it was all about financial stability. And I didn't start thinking about that till later, like I was like a junior, in high school. And I was not a good student. I was a very bad student, and I had to get my stuff together because I was like, oh, I need to think about college. And, my mom, she doesn't know the system. She's new to this country. She had to learn English when she got here. So I'm like trying to figure it out. And I picked accounting and I stuck with it. I got my bachelor's, I got my master's. I worked with KPMG and some regional firms in taxation, and I had a child. And then I was like, oh no, I cannot work these long hours and then not see my baby at home. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, this doesn't sound like a fulfilling life, and not what I want to do. And then I've learned a lot since then. So I decided to pursue art with a lot of support at home.
That's great. I had a similar thing. I was a comic book writer in middle school, then a poet type in high school. I don't want to show pictures of this. Oh, Bard Rob. It was not great. It was a lot of snapping, and none of it was good. I was calling myself Sebastian. It was not great. And I started looking at, because having the same thing, having I look at it that it's a class thing. It's a color thing, or what have you, where it's like, here's a real job. That's the way that it's presented. Like, you're going to make money from doing this real job. So I went to college for business administration, concentration in marketing. Right. And after a couple of years, I was like, this is not for me. Listening to people that you're aspiring to be. Yeah, you might miss time with the family. You might get 4 hours of sleep. I was like, nah, I love sleep. So I always had this kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So I want to say by the time I was like 24, like a couple years into this career that everyone's telling me I should pursue, I realized I was burnt out. I was like, you can't be burnt out at 24. Yeah. And I was using the job. I kind of changed to how I identified it. I used the job to fund a creative passion, which happens to be podcasting, which 13 years later, I'm still doing. And it's like finding that's the balance or what have you, because I like to be able to do what I want, to have something that feels fulfilling other than being a part of this capitalistic wheel that kind of churns.
Right. Right. And it's, like you said, I have to use this to do this. And it's like, at a certain point, that's like survival, right? In the wheel, in the system. Yeah. And, I still struggle with that, honestly. But I am also happy I made the decision because I knew in my heart that 20, 30 years from then, when I made the change, that I would do it eventually, but it would be so long down the line. I didn't want to have regrets. I wanted to pursue it now. And honestly, I got burnt out too. So later on, I'm like, wait, is art like my therapy? Is it my therapy too? Like I need this,
Yeah.
So I'm trying to make it work,
So what are some of the other things that may be hidden within it? You touched on identity earlier. You touched on a few other things earlier within your work. What are some of the things that you maybe want viewers to take away from your work? Maybe some of those smaller, those secondary, those tertiary meanings. What are some of those other things that you want folks to take out of your work?
Well, that was a question that came up in the artist talk too, and it stumped me because, everyone views art differently, and their takeaway, I have no say in what their takeaways are when they view the art itself, right? But I said something, and I have this friend who does plant medicine, and so she's a healer. And I was like, wow, you have such talent on, like herbals and the science behind it. Herbal medicines. And she's like, well, you do too. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She's like, well, art is also medicine. It's visual medicine for the viewers. And she thanked me. She's like, thank you for your art. It brings me joy. Like, this is medicine. And I was like thinking of that, and I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. I've never thought of it that way. So like any messages I have, like a lot of it is it's personal. But if it resonates, like, great. If it's just like aesthetically beautiful and you like the colors and that brings you joy, that's great too. The takeaway, ultimately is positive. I mean, not a lot of the storytelling behind my art could be positive. But I think just the joys, like smelling the flowers,
Yeah.
getting that out of it.
I dig that. And thank you for sharing that. That's great. I'm going to start looking at doing this podcast as like a prescription, like take 2 of these in the morning. Because people talk about it like this series is as much for people who are the artists, people who are interested in Baltimore, people who are just creatives. And it's like, what is that person's process? Is that person a person? Like, because things can feel kind of monolithic sometimes. Like, oh, they're so much better than me or whatever. It's like, nah, I screw up all the time, and having that from different artists, it gives people context, and it serves as, I think, maybe a means of normalizing things, or a means of medicine, as you talked about, just being able to share what you're creating, and even the conversation and the discourse that can come out of it. It's like, well, I think it means this. Well, obviously it's talking about colonialism, and you can have so many different things in there.
Yeah, thanks. And then also, like, when you talk about like process, like artists' process looks so different. Like, I'm a mother of 2, so my process or time in the studio is going to be different from someone else, or a single person, or another parent with older children. And I have young children. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. And there's a lot of ways to do what you do. And there's a lot of hurdles. And it's great that you have a platform where artists and creatives can share that, because it's not monolithic. There isn't one way to this end point of the art world,
And then boom, art. There you go. I'm done. I did. I looked at it for 3 hours and boom, art.
Yeah. Like, what's the roadmap? Can you show me the roadmap? It's like, oh, no, I can't.
I can paint it for you, actually, using these brush strokes. It's
Here
like,
are my rates.
like, that's not how you use a paintbrush. So who and what are some of your creative inspirations? I would imagine, obviously a lot of it is personal. I would imagine maybe family. I would imagine 305, Baltimore, Central America. But speak more on that.
Yeah, so I think my inspiration came from just learning more about tracing my roots back to Nicaragua. And like that has gone everywhere. Like it went from language, right? Like, why do we use these words in our Spanish? Like our Spanish in Nicaragua is really a hybrid of Nahuatl, which is an indigenous out of the thousands languages. So it's like a combination. It's like, oh, why is that? So then it goes back. Like then you're learning. It's like down the rabbit hole. Now you're learning about colonialism, and now you're learning about ethnocide. And it's just like, wow. And then same thing with food. Like I painted corn, right? And why? Because corn is a staple food for us. Like, it's in our tortilla, nacatamales. It's like, I never like put any thought and this is like what we eat, but it's like, okay, let me research that, and then go back 10,000 years. It was domesticated in Mesoamerica. And it's like, wow, like there's a long history here. Like, I want to know this and I want to share it, I want to share it with other folks because it's beautiful and it's reconnecting, with a lot of lost history. Through colonization. So like, as I've researched, I've painted. And so, I don't stick to one thing because I say that I'm evolving as a person. I learn and I have different interests and my paintings are going to change with that. So it's kind of started there with Baltimore and being like, oh, I'm outside of Miami and this is different. And then researching and looking at my identity and going there, right now I'm just doing watercolors of birds that are native to Central and South America. And it's like, it's nothing like my other paintings that are like really big and have a huge story. It's like, no, this is like just therapeutic for me and it's beautiful. And this is what I want to do right now. And I know it's going to change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Jesse's feather period right here.
My feather period. Yeah.
I think that's cool when you go back and you're able to look at the history and like why are things the way that they are. And I'm an Aquarius and we enjoy weird details and factoids. So when you watch documentaries, sometimes you'll find out, he's like, hold up, what? Heroin was a brand name. Like I found it out recently that heroin was a brand name. And I was like, look, or that marijuana was used because it sounds Spanish. So we could just put that on like Spanish, like Hispanic, like Latinx folks. And I was like, this is wrong. This is so wrong. And like just looking at it, I was like, oh, I thought it was always the name. Like, no, cannabis is the name. Mm-hmm. It's like marijuana just sounds ethnic. It's like, man, this is so racist. So you start finding these things out and start going down that rabbit hole. So I don't want to look any further. I'm just going to be mad for the rest of the day.
It's like, why couldn't I just be ignorant? Yeah. Why did you choose to learn more?
but then it's like so interesting or what have you. And I think ultimately what I was trying to get at there is that we're on the other side of it now, especially with like social media and things of that nature, where we have a selective memory. So if we want to, let's say, go through and cancel someone, we can look back at 40 years ago. But if it's somebody that we like, they could do something kind of crappy within the last couple of years, and we kind of ignore that. Like we have a really interesting relationship with how far we look at things and how we look at history, especially in this kind of social media age.
Yeah. And It just reminds me of like the history we learn in school.
Yes.
And like how short, how easily like just changing things up here and there. It's like, okay, this is what you need to focus on. And this, no, we're going to gloss over that. And it's like, basic propaganda. It's like, yeah, it's kind of reinventing itself differently now,
It's nuanced.
Social media, right?
It's nuanced, and it's. I remember I had a conversation with artist Kumasi J. Barnett about. We were talking about like pop culture. What he does is he one of the things that he does is he paints like comic covers, but it has like a racial or social justice tint to it. So instead of the Amazing Spider-Man, it's the Amazing Black Man. Instead of the Daredevil, it's White Devil, and it's great. So we were talking about like, what is it, last year, maybe the year before, when all of these shows were, let's retcon and let's remove this insensitive episode. Oh, no, y'all were shitty then. Let's keep it in there. Let's keep it all in there. We need to know who y'all were, because this erasure of history just leads to, oh, yeah, we were always good. What about that episode when everyone was wearing blackface, or, people were appropriating lifestyles? It's really interesting what we do with history. So I think as an artist, what have you, being able to go and look at what the history is and say, nah, I'm going to touch on that in my own way. I think that's important.
That is so important. And there was like something, it was like Looney Tunes. It was like circulating within like indigenous platforms where it's like Bugs Bunny was like, being racist, like towards Native Americans. And it was just like, wow, is this like for real? It's like, oh my goodness, and like, you're not going to see that today. And you got like new Space Jams come out and all that. And it's like, yeah, like this company is racist at its roots, and like the whole country is like, let's be honest. Right.
No, it's true. When you start seeing these things, you're like, nah, that wasn't good then. Not good now. Definitely wasn't good then. It's like, why are you wearing a headdress? This has nothing to do with this bit. Like, what is this? And being able to kind of take an attempt to appreciate like what the intent is. But then it's just like, at a certain point, it's like, nah, you got to own that. Don't, because money is involved and cancellation happens and such. No. Own your bullshit. Yeah,
they never do. Corporations never do.
That's why I don't eat Aunt Jemima pancakes anymore. What is the what comes to mind when you think of very significant visual moments? As a visual artist, like what comes to mind as very significant visual moments in your life?
Visual moments. I don't know what that means.
So, like, let's say you saw a really beautiful sunrise, and you're like, you know what, that pops. Or you were visiting somewhere, or even like seeing someone, you're like, wow, that pops. That lighting is great. I got to capture that. I got to put that into a painting somehow.
No, you're so right. You're so right. Like I have done that, and I have an eye for color, and I tend to saturate my paintings, like, not on purpose, but like I can really like zero in and see the colors and like metals or reflect anything. And this reminded me of this painting that I did, which was of a street sign, and it had rust. It was an old Baltimore street sign, and there was rust. There was the metal clamps and everything. But it was just so simple but beautiful to me. Like the reds, like I saturated them in the painting, and I also tied in like the magical elements of birds with the same colors as the street signs. But yeah, I would say color, like visuals, they have inspired me to paint. Not like, so that hasn't always just been, there's elements of my roots, right? Yeah. But there's also like, why that street sign, or, why that water fountain, or those brick buildings over there. It's like, no, it's the color. It is like that pop, and it's okay. It's rust, it's red, but it's like, I'm so used to seeing bright colors. Like I'm from Miami. Like there's a lot of bright colors down there, and I see them up here too, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my Art Deco teal suit together. We're gonna sort it out. I mean, I like teal.
Such a
I like
soft
teal.
spot for Art Deco, like anything Art Deco.
So what images or things when you're in your kind of working space, what keeps you company? Like what's there? Like for me, I have a few gifts that artists have made for me. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta keep that in here. It's like, this is really cool. This is really sweet of them. And it's part of my, I guess, my creative totems. And you can't see it, but behind me, all of my pop culture stuff. I had nothing but Funko Pops and toys. Is so uncool. That's why I blur it out. But for me to create and to edit or to even come up with questions, it's just like, I don't know, let me rub my Jason Pop on the head. Give me some strength. So what's in the studio for you that you've just like, you know what, something's missing. Where's my totem? Where's it at?
Oh my gosh, yes. Okay. So I have a little room in my house that I made my studio, and it is full of stuff everywhere. So I have plants like crazy. I have to have tropical plants. Like you can see them here in the background. I got some palms. Like
I see.
It's home for me. Like I have to have my little plantitas. But I also have a ton of art like thrown up on the wall. A lot of pop art. I love pop art. From local artists or like little letters like that I've received. I'll just staple it onto the wall, and I just have a whole wall of like, it's almost like a collage by now of just different things. Like I have protest signs up there that I've used in the past. It's just a bunch of random stuff, like a lot of stickers, a lot of like social justice art and Baltimore art. And then I have like my jewelry, and I have a little altar with my tinctures, some medicine, a place where I can meditate, and like talk to my ancestors, and so it's a very calm like energy. Like this is my space, no toys on the floor or anything. No, it's not true. The kids do get in, and they have, they bring their toys. Yeah. So like right now I'm like I haven't been working in the studio as much because I'm working in my dining room. I'm working in my dining room because I'm working with watercolors, which is very like mobile. I feel like it's an easy cleanup, as opposed to like this huge canvas that I would like usually work on. And I'm closer to my kids, so they're here, they're like just over there or whatnot, and I'm available, And you got to work with what you have. And so, yeah, so I just take the plants wherever I go to.
No, I dig it. I mean, I turned off my blur to show you all of the ridiculousness in my background.
I see. I love it.
It's just a nerd's office.
Oh no, it's great.
So I have one more question before we get to the rapid fire. So tell me more about your piece featuring cacao, and how does cacao represent your heart?
Ooh, cacao. So cacao is an indigenous plant from Mesoamerica again, and it is the fruit that chocolate is made out of. And chocolate, not chocolate, cacao itself is a very like common drink that I grew up drinking. It's like now you add sugar and milk, and it's delicious. It's very grindy, it has a lot of little, I don't know what you call it. It's like little cacao parts in it.
Oh, like the nibs.
Yeah, nibs. I guess you call them nibs. And again, I never thought about it, but I started researching like cacao and its sacredness, how it is medicinal, and it's just like something you drink all the time. It's like, oh, I don't know anything, but like there's, I don't know. How it relates to my art is in like, just like, basically like, this is where I'm from, right? Yeah. This is why I drink it. And this is me honoring it. So it's a painting of me holding a cacao pod, and it blends together. Like the hands are colorful, but so is the cacao, because to me that represents like being part and one with the land. right?
Yeah.
So it's like there isn't a separation of the two. Like cacao is not just a plant; it's also a relative.
I did a chocolate and coffee tasting recently, and we really went on this long journey about like mindfully eating like chocolate, and it was like 75 to 100% like cacaos from I think Colombia, and I was just like the guy moved from Italy to the guy that came out there moved from Italy to like Colombia, and he had a farm down there, and he brought one of the pods, and he was just showing us each stage, and they kept asking him, the other guys that organized it, how did you get through customs with this? And it was just so funny, and he was so passionate about chocolate. I was like, all right. He's like, it's about love. I was like, this chocolate is great, but sir.
It is such a process though, like to go from the cacao to chocolate. Like I went to a chocolate factory. It's funny saying that out loud. In the Dominican Republic. And man, the process is serious.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I have respect for it because it has this relationship with, like, you have South and Central America with Africa, with countries within Africa. So you got the chocolate and coffee. They have very similar stories, and really black and brown people are the ones that are providing them.
Right. And they're like, coffee's an ancestral food in Africa, and like it's medicinal, right? And now you have these like ancestral foods that are exploited, right? Through slavery and history and today. And today you have exploitation of workers for coffee in Central America, cacao in places in Africa.
Yeah.
Go figure.
So next time you're eating your chocolate and eating good chocolate, not Hershey's, not Mars, none of that garbage, eating good chocolate and drinking your coffee, just recognize that. Yeah. So now we get to the rapid fire questions, which will wrap up my yapping. So the rapid fire questions, we talked beforehand, but for the fine folks who are listening, rapid fire is pretty much, they're kind of yes or no questions, or kind of just minimal input from the guest, but they don't have to provide context if they don't want to. So it's just like, that's the answer. All right. So
nervous.
No, don't be. Toucan or macaw?
Toucan.
All right. When are you most inspired?
See, this is not rapid enough for me. In the
I asked it pretty quick. Okay. Okay, that's your answer. Okay. Favorite beverage?
I'm saying cacao.
Gallo pinto or arroz a la plancha?
Gallo pinto for life.
I researched. You can tell I researched there, by the way. Oh, my
God, I have some in the fridge. My mom just made me some.
I was like, looking at that, I was like, Nicaraguan foods. I literally typed that in. And lastly, this came from an article I read maybe about you earlier. Favorite vegetable in your garden?
Chitoma, which is green pepper.
All right, because I was just like, verde, something other. No, 5 years of Spanish wasted, useless.
No, you're right. Like verde, green peppers. But their ancestral name would be derivative of chiltoma, which is like a Spanish Nahuatl name. So I think maybe it would be chiltomat, maybe.
This segment of Learning Ancestral Espanol is brought to you by Jessy.
And it's not ancestral. Like, so okay. Espanol comes from Spain, right? Yeah. So that's not even like an indigenous language here.
Yes, that's true. So that's all I had. I'd like to give the floor over to you to shamelessly plug any website, social media, anything. Pretty much the floor is yours. And thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Rob. This has been so nice. Like, I'm usually nervous. Like, I'm not someone who likes to talk so much publicly, but you made this very comfortable. And
thank you.
I hope viewers got something, or the listeners, excuse me, out of it. If you want to learn more, my website is jdesantisart.com. I post way too much on social media, and that's only Instagram for me. I'll be at Motor House till October 30th, showing with 2 other local artists. They're amazing. Check it out. I have 2 pieces that will be showing this month at BWI's International Wing. Let's see what else. Oh, the Great Lantern Parade this Saturday. I'll be there selling some reproductions. So yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Well, there you have it, folks. For Jessy DeSantis, I am Rob Lee, saying that there's art in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.